Every 90 years, history sends a warning, and most of us ignore it. 1929, the Great Crash. Millions lost everything overnight. Entire families, businesses, and even governments were shaken to their core. And today, 2026, the same patterns are emerging once again. If we ignore them now, the consequences could be catastrophic. History has a habit of repeating itself, and every empire that ignored warning signs eventually fell. The lessons of the past are staring us in the face, yet humanity continues to make the same mistakes. In 1929, America was the world's richest nation, experiencing unprecedented economic growth. The stock market seemed unstoppable, and speculation was rampant. Ordinary citizens, convinced that the boom would never end, borrowed money to invest, banks lent freely, and corporations expanded recklessly. Beneath this prosperity, however, were cracks that no one wanted to acknowledge. Debt was piling up, risky investments were everywhere, and greed blinded people to the looming disaster. Fast forward to 2026, and the scenario is frighteningly similar. America is drowning in debt, both public and private. Inflation is rising, consumer confidence is falling, and the stock market shows signs of extreme volatility. Experts warn that the U.S. economy is sitting on a powder keg, and a sudden trigger could set off a financial chain reaction reminiscent of 1929. The hidden warning signs are even more alarming. Wealth inequality today has reached staggering levels. A tiny fraction of the population controls most of the nation's wealth, while millions struggle with stagnant wages and rising costs of living. Corporate debt has reached record highs, with companies borrowing not to grow, but to survive. Risky speculation in stocks, crypto, and other financial instruments is rampant. Just as in 1929, ordinary citizens are unaware of the dangers they face, lured by the illusion of endless prosperity. The lesson from history is clear. Bubbles burst, and when they do, they wipe out millions. Economic collapse doesn't happen in isolation. In 1929, political instability and social unrest followed the financial crash. Trust in institutions vanished, unemployment skyrocketed, and the government struggled to respond. In 2026, the parallels are striking. Political polarization is at an all-time high. Protests, civil unrest, and distrust in leadership are becoming commonplace. Governments appear powerless to address mounting economic and social crises, while citizens grow increasingly frustrated with rising inequality and shrinking opportunities. History shows that economic crises can trigger social upheaval, and the signs are clearly visible today. The global economy is also under immense strain. In 1929, the U.S. crash triggered a worldwide depression. Today, interconnected global markets mean that a significant collapse in America could have devastating effects across the world. International trade is fragile, supply chains are strained, and geopolitical tensions are escalating. Countries dependent on U.S. markets could face economic collapse if warning signs are ignored. History teaches us that no nation is immune. When a superpower falters, the effects are global. Overconfidence is another dangerous parallel. In 1929, people believed that wealth creation was limitless and that any problems could be solved with temporary measures. Banks, corporations, and governments acted recklessly, convinced that prosperity would continue indefinitely. Today, a similar mindset persists. Many investors and policymakers assume that modern technology, globalization, and financial innovation make us immune to collapse. The belief that this time is different has historically been the precursor to disaster. Technology, while advanced, can accelerate both growth and collapse. High-frequency trading, automated algorithms, and digital currencies create a system that can spiral faster than ever. While these innovations give the illusion of stability, they can also magnify risks. The same patterns of reckless behavior, combined with modern tools, could create a collapse faster and more severe than in 1929. The human cost of ignoring these warnings is immense. Millions lost jobs, savings, and homes during the Great Depression. Families were shattered, communities broke down, and a generation grew up in fear and uncertainty. In 2026, the stakes are even higher. Modern society is more interconnected than ever, with billions of lives linked through technology, finance, and trade. A collapse today would not just affect one nation, but the entire world. The social, political, and economic fallout could be unprecedented. Financial crises also affect the psychological state of society. In 1929, fear and panic spread faster than any stock market crash. People withdrew money from banks, hoarded resources, and lost trust in their governments. Today, social media and instant communication can amplify panic exponentially. Misinformation, rumors, and speculation could intensify a crisis, creating fear-driven reactions that worsen economic and social instability. Humanity has changed, but its reactions to fear remain remarkably consistent. Political mismanagement is another clear warning. Governments that ignore debt, overspending, and corruption create conditions for collapse. In 1929, political decisions often worsened the crisis rather than solving it. In 2026, leaders face similar challenges: rising debt, fiscal deficits, and social unrest. Failure to act decisively or ignoring warning signs for short-term gain could trigger the next global catastrophe. The window to prevent disaster is closing rapidly. History also shows that crises often start small but escalate quickly. In 1929, a few failed banks triggered a nationwide panic. Today, even minor disruptions, a sudden market crash, a geopolitical conflict, or a banking failure, could cascade into a full-blown crisis. The interconnectedness of global finance means that no nation can isolate itself from the effects. A collapse in one sector or country could trigger domino effects worldwide. So what can we learn? First, patterns repeat. Every boom eventually turns to bust. Every empire that ignores debt, inequality, and corruption falls. Second, warning signs are always visible. Rising debt, market speculation, political polarization, and social unrest are all indicators that a crisis may be near. Third, preparation is key. Those who recognize danger and act can survive, while those who ignore reality face devastating consequences. The question isn't if a collapse will happen, it's when. 1929 was a warning, and it wasn't heeded. 2026 is another warning, louder than ever. Governments, corporations, and citizens must acknowledge the danger before it's too late. The clock is ticking, and history does not forgive repeated mistakes. Every empire, every nation that ignored warnings eventually fell. And today, the world stands at the edge of a precipice. The lessons of 1929 are staring us in the face. It is up to us to listen before history repeats itself, and before the next great crash changes the world forever. History never repeats itself exactly, but it always rhymes. In 1929, the warning signs were visible to everyone, yet most people chose to ignore them. Debt was rising, markets were filled with blind confidence, and leaders kept promising stability while the system slowly cracked from the inside. The real disaster of 1929 was not just the crash itself, but the silence before it, the moment when people sensed something was wrong and still did nothing. Now in 2026, the world looks modern, faster, and more advanced, but the pattern feels dangerously familiar. The same overconfidence, the same denial, and the same belief that this time is different is everywhere again. History has already shown us what happens when warnings are ignored. The question is no longer whether history will repeat itself, but who will be prepared when it does. If this video made you stop and think, don't ignore this warning like they did in 1929. Like this video so more people can see it, subscribe for deeper truth-based stories about history repeating itself, and comment below. Do you believe 2026 will repeat 1929, or can we change the outcome this time? Because history always gives warnings, but it never waits for us to listen.